Hi, welcome to this quick overview of the Cloudflare Audit Log, which is currently still a work in progress, but aims to create a source of truth for Cloudflare grid configuration. Right now, we have a multitude of ways to manage Cloudflare, none of which are really that stellar, and we are generally lacking an overview of what has changed and what the source of those changes might be. So in effort to combat that and also to enable us to have a source of truth that matches the Cloudflare configuration on their server side as closely as possible, while also giving us the ability to use that configuration in other forms. This project was created to provide us with a JSON-based structure so we can audit changes and also do programmatic analysis of configuration changes and that kind of stuff. So first I'll show you how this is set up and how it's supposed to work, and then I'll show you how a change is detected and ultimately applied to the known source. So looking at the branches history, or at the branches list, we see two branches. We have the default branch, which is the Cloudflare import one, and then we have the known good. These are set up to be basically identical. So the project is set up in a way that it is prohibiting pushes to the known good branch at all, and you can only non-force push to the Cloudflare import one. We also have pipelines. We have a pipeline schedule that every hour runs the pipelines on the Cloudflare import jobs, on the Cloudflare import run, sorry. And this will do an assortment of things. The first thing it'll do is it will grab the configuration from Cloudflare and put it in an artifact. This artifact is then analyzed for differences to the known good reports, and should there be a difference, it will be alerted via the sync alert over here, and any difference will also be automatically committed back into the repository. This is so that we always have the latest state in the repository, nonetheless what's actually there. So we can rely on the Cloudflare import branch to be as close to the Cloudflare source as we possibly can. We also run some more tasks to basically just make sure that the data that we get back is in the form that we expect it to be. And then we also have some security checks in place, which are currently allowed to fail because we have some outstanding issues there that prevent us from actually using them in a pipeline reliably. Yeah. Okay. So how do we detect changes? We detect changes by basically diffing. So when we download the configuration, we do so in a reproducible way. So every time we fetch the configuration from Cloudflare, it is identical. As you can see here, we do not have any diffs. And so we just generate an empty XML for test cases. Because we have integration with test cases here, so we will see that we have 107 test cases, which are split up into basically just validation tests, of which we have 58 tests. And then there are also tests that diff the reports, so the actual JSON files that are the configuration from Cloudflare, and also the code, which is basically everything else in the repository. And then we also have the security tests. If we have diversion from the reports from the import branch to the known good, we will fail the pipeline. We will not fail a pipeline if there are code changes, because code changes may be pretty much anything. But what we care about with reflecting the pipeline status is if the data that is in the known good branch is what is currently running on Cloudflare's side. Currently, this test is not completely exhaustive. We don't download all configuration yet. This is still a work in progress. But that is something that is definitely the target of this approach. Okay. I will now provoke a change that will cause this pipeline to fail. I will accelerate the process by running the schedule manually so that we don't have to wait an hour for the change to be detected. But yeah, that's something I'm going to do now. So I just want to add just a dummy page rule right now, basically. So this is on the staging Cloudflare account, and I will just create a new page rule for a URL that is probably not going to be in use. And I will just, what will I do? Well, let's just make it the maximum security level, basically, just so that we get like a little warning message, basically. I will put that last because I don't want to do anything that's destructive, and I click Save and Deploy. Cool. So now we see that we have this new rule that I just created, and it's active on Cloudflare. Okay, so how do we go about detecting a change? Well, this is where the pipeline schedule comes into play. Usually this runs every hour. This can probably be adapted to run faster. It can also be triggered by external means. Yeah, basically just run the pipeline. So when we run the pipeline on the Cloudflare import branch, we should see that we get a few jobs that respond. And these are also, the stages are not completely in order. They are created using the directed acyclic graph feature of GitLab, of which there is a visualization of the graph from version 13.2, which is scheduled to be released today. Same goes for an alerting feature that I rely on that is not completely to my liking in 13.1. But I will come to those differences in a few seconds when we're actually at that stage. Okay. So we can see that the audit is currently running, and when we actually just look in the job, we can see that we're basically just dumping lots of configuration data and then writing it out to JSON. So we have found 144 matching files. And if we refresh the pipeline, we should now see that the diff report is running. This job is expected to fail, whereas this job is probably not going to fail. And you can also see that the generate reports job has already been running, and this one will in turn trigger another pipeline on the same branch. So here you can basically see this pushing this rule at the bottom. The priority list has created more than one change, one being it actually added the rule and then it changed the priority of all the other ones as well. What we can now see is basically that we now have a new commit on that branch. The commit is pushed using the CI skip feature, so this will not. Never mind. No, this is basically automatically terminated. Because as long as there is a diff between so this will basically automatically terminate. Because we will not have diffs in the actual pipeline. So how it works is the audit will generate the audit job will generate a JSON response, which is put into artifacts. And then this commit reports job will pull those artifacts and basically see, is there a difference between what I'm currently seeing on the current branch, the branch being the GitLab import branch, and whatever I just got from the artifact. If there's a diff, I'm going to take that diff and commit it. If there's no diff, I'm just going to close out. Basically, this is the last pipeline that's going to be running. And now what we can actually see is that over here, we see that this sync alert has actually fired now. And it should have fired twice because the previous pipeline also already had diffs in there. Yeah, but if we look at the report again, we can see that the diff is, this diff is always created from the current state of the branch to the known good. So if you have multiple changes that basically just pile on, this job, the latest job, will always contain all the changes between the two branches. Okay, so what we can see now is when we go back to the project overview, is that we now have the pipeline as failed. And this little image also has the nice shortcut of taking us directly to the diff, and we can immediately assess what has changed. And we can create a merge request for this, which is what I'm going to do now. It's automatically pre-populated, and this is basically just to facilitate the authorization process and approval process that we want to have in place for those kind of changes. We can see that there are some tests that are good and some failed. We can see that some member account tests failed, but those are not really important for now at least. Okay, so what do you have to look for when you want to merge something? Basically, you should see the pipeline similar to this, and diffs from report to unknown to the known good are okay because that is what you're merging. And you should aim for security and other tests to pass if it is reasonable to do so. Yeah, so this diff looks good. And we have already assessed that, yes, this is the change that we want to do. We have this page rule, this is the target, and it sets the security level to our attack, and the priorities get shifted. Cool. That's exactly what we want. So I'm going to auto-approve, I'm going to approve my own change here. And I will merge this. And it's important that this is not merged with a squash, because it's a fast forward merge, and if it's squashed, then the next fast forward merge will not work. And I think there also is a feature coming in 13.2 that allows you to actually turn off the ability to squash, which is something that is definitely required in this case. Really sorry for the background noise. Okay. So now that this is merged, what we should see is we should have another tag with the current date, which is this one. So it's 524 UTC. And this is basically a history of when a change was marked as accepted, meaning it has been integrated into the known good branch. There are no release notes. And this will also appear on the graph. So you can basically see which version is there. Okay, cool. We also have generated alerts. And as I said, the alert has been triggered twice. This is something that is changing with GitLab 13.2. With GitLab 13.2, these alerts will automatically be merged into one. And because we have already kind of just closed out the issue for this, closed out the merge request, I will just resolve those two incidents, two alerts. And this should be done automatically in the future, but I didn't build the API integrations yet so far. Okay, so now we should see that the pipeline is running, and ultimately it should pass again, because the changes that are in Cloudflare are coherent with what we have in the reports. So what is actually in those reports? We have different folders for different types. So we first have the accounts, and in this one, there's only one account, which is in this case GitLab. We're not open the members JSON, but basically there's email addresses and the roles associated to those email addresses and accounts. We have the zone metadata, the account metadata, which basically just has some generic settings in the name for the account. And then we have the roles, which is just basically a mapping from the name that is used in the UI and the API to the actual permissions that this role has. A user can have multiple roles, and the permissions will be just added. Then we also have the zones, and here we have the zones that the audit log has access to, which currently are all. And when we look at the staging GitLab.com, we see that we have a lot of data in here, which is still not all, but we have a lot of data. So we have the search JSON, which is showing all the currently installed certificates. It's not showing fingerprints or anything, but what it does show us is the current modification time, which might change depending on auto renewals, that kind of stuff, and the expiry rate, which may also be auto renewed in the case of Cloudflare certificates. We also have lots of other things. We have metadata, which just has general zone settings. We have the page rules JSON that I just showed you earlier with the diff. We have a full dump of all DNS records for the whole zone, which in this case is, not that small. We have with the spectrum apps with all their configuration in here as well. So if there's a change there, we will see that. And basically all the stuff. What might be most interesting to the security team is the WIP packages. This file should not change too much in the content, but rather in the property. So the severity in the action mode is the thing that might change. The detection mode is fixed for each role set. And then we have the actual WIP packages as they are configured in Cloudflare. And those are in a form that we basically just have the general JSON file with some metadata relating to it. And then when we actually go into the folder, we have a dump of all the groups of the rule sets. And if we go into one, in there we will have the actual rules. So this provides us with a way to have granular auditability, but also have a kind of big view of what changed. Because if we know that something changed in the OS mod security core rule set, then we know that the change is there, and we can pinpoint it far easier than just some WAF package will change. Or if Cloudflare adds a different package, it will automatically be added here. If they add a rule, that will be more clear here as well. Yeah. So by now the pipeline has successfully run. Yes, it has. So now we can see the pipeline has passed. And if we click on the link, we don't see any diffs anymore, which is exactly what we wanted. This pipeline gets triggered via a little hack. When stuff gets merged onto the known good branch, we have one stage that takes it upon itself to tag the current commit hash with the current date, as well as just triggering the Cloudflare import branches pipeline. And that is the first look at this work in progress tool work pipeline workflow thingy. A few things that are still missing, one of which is to have a kind of validation to the rules that we create in the UI for Cloudflare. For example, the firewall rules that we create. So we have firewall rules. We have a documented pattern on how we want to use those. Sometimes it kind of diverts a bit. And what is missing still is to basically enforce this format that we have here. And also just to kind of have like a record of what is what is the state of each firewall rule at which given point in time, so that if there are changes here that are either done by us or by someone else, we can immediately detect it. This also serves as a kind of intrusion detection system, because while I certainly hope that would not be the case, should our Cloudflare accounts get breached, we will detect it one way or another if they do configuration changes. If they revoke the token, we will see that the pipeline fails because we can no longer fetch the resources. And if something else changes, we hopefully have an audit log of that in terms of there being a change in the Git repository. Okay. Got it? Bye.